Welcome back, everybody, to the show. Let's start with this. The Trump administration is backing off. The pressure worked. The protests worked. Now, the darker part of this is that horrific tragedies happened to force this moment. And if the Trump administration hadn't taken the actions that they chose to with the ICE surge in Minneapolis, none of those tragedies would have had to have happened. But they did, and our voices speaking out actually mattered. And an administration that refuses to admit failure, refuses to admit when they made a mistake, while they're not using those words, are doing just that. I'll show you Leavitt running to television to say, no, this is good. This is because of it was a big success and everything was actually perfect. But we know why the back off is happening, why they're ending the surge of ICE into Minneapolis. And that's because it was a failure and Americans pushed back. Mike Norton wrote, "It's hard to feel like ICE leaving Minneapolis is a victory or even really feel much relief yet, but this is the Trump administration acknowledging they couldn't win in Minneapolis. Proud of the courage my neighbors showed the last few weeks while ICE terrorized our community." Here is Tom Homan making this announcement, then we'll get to Karoline Leavitt.
Again, but prioritization doesn't mean forget about everybody else. That means you have a criminal alien here and non-criminal here. The criminal always comes first because he's the biggest threat to the communities. We're going to continue to force immigration law, but we'll get back to the footprint.
Nah. You see, so from the standpoint of you're making a major announcement, not this. This is not how you deliver it, because we're not doing like speaking in tongues, right? This is not a church service.
There's no, I've noticed in the media district.
That's just not what we're doing here, Tom. We need you to actually speak in a way we understand.
We're going to continue to force immigration law, but we'll get back to the footprint here, the normal footprint here. But there will be some security teams staying here, the QRFs, until we're assured that those agitators, incidents either stay low or further decline. I'm not going to remove everybody out of the safety of our officers, but like I said, and Operation Metro Surge is ending. And in the next week, we're going to deploy the officers here in detail back to their home stations or other areas of the country.
It's over. This operation, the surge, the thing that sparked all this chaos is over. Just the quickest pause to request that you click the subscribe button, the simplest, easiest, freest way, completely free, to support the work that we do. Right below the video, click that subscribe button, back to the video. And that is an implicit admission from the Trump administration that they realize they effed up. And they know if they keep this up and people keep seeing the images and they keep killing people, that there will be far too much backlash for even them to charge through. And that is where Leavitt comes in. Because this is being reported on for what it is, which is them backing off and them realizing they made a horrible, horrible mistake with trying to do this ICE takeover of Minneapolis. And it led to literal bloodshed for no reason. Now, Leavitt's job is to go out there and pretend like this was some magnificent success, which is humiliating for her and a sad state of affairs.
So Democrats, they were celebrating when Tom Homan announced that he was going to pull down the immigration operations in Minnesota. So what does this mean for immigration enforcement? I know a lot of people have been taken out that are here illegally, but there are thousands more. How many was it, Brian? 13?
Yeah, 1,600.
1,600 more that are still there, according to Tom Homan.
And Todd Lyons.
Sure. Well, Operation Metro Surge in Minnesota has been a resounding success. It has resulted in the detention and deportation of more than 4,000 illegal alien criminals. Let me repeat, 4,000 illegal alien criminals just from Minnesota alone.
Vast majority of people they're detaining are not criminals. Bunch of new data out on that. All the way up to like in the 80% realm. Or the 500% realm, as Trump would put it. You can think of it either way. Are not criminals.
And while the surge is coming to an end, immigration enforcement in Minnesota absolutely will not.
So this is her trying to put lipstick on a pig, okay? And we know exactly why. We've seen the carnage. We've seen the lies. We've even heard that behind the scenes, Trump got embarrassed by how much his administration was lying about the events that were unfolding. And then, not to mention, you have legal defeats, like a Trump-appointed judge ruling that ICE violated constitutional rights of Minnesota detainees. And the headline goes that this Trump-appointed judge dropped the hammer in strict order and granted a temporary restraining order with strict new requirements for the ICE agents. When we say that constitutional rights are being disregarded, being violated, that our Constitution is being ignored, it's not just libs on YouTube saying that. It's Trump-appointed federal judges saying it and issuing rulings in accordance with that. Now, let me show you the Minneapolis mayor responding to this news on Chris Hayes' show.
There were some intimations made by Mr. Homan that there were some agreements reached. You know, there's been this sort of, I'm a little skeptical of its authenticity, but I'll just say it, that, you know, all we want is for you to turn over the hardened criminals and let us cooperate with you in the jails, and we won't have to go around crashing into people's cars and dragging them out of their homes. Was there some agreement reached here that led to the end of this?
Our position has remained the same throughout, and I've been saying this for months, if not years, which is this. We will work with the federal government to catch murderers and rapists and people that are causing danger in our city. We will work extensively with the DEA and the ATF and the FBI to put people like that behind bars. We will not, however, cooperate on enforcing federal immigration policy, period. That was our position then. That is our position now. I had two productive, if not three productive meetings with the border czar, Tom Homan. You know, obviously, there's progress in that they are leaving right now, but as far as some deal that was struck to get them out, the answer is no. I think what you saw is you saw a federal government and an administration that thought that they were going to break the people of Minneapolis down. They thought that we were going to back down and sort of kowtow to whatever it is that they were looking to get done, not just locally in Minneapolis, but nationwide. They were looking to implement a national agenda based on coercing us to change local policy. And here's the thing, we didn't. The people of Minneapolis stood up. They stood up for their neighbors. They loved on each other. And I think that's the kind of patriotism that is ultimately going to get us through this.
And that's very compelling and inspiring. And I read you that post about someone in Minneapolis and the pride that people are feeling despite everything that's already been lived through in just a few weeks about their neighbors standing up. And they frame it very dishonestly and disingenuously, the Trump administration does, as like, if they would just help us get the actual dangerous public safety threats, we wouldn't have to have masked men roaming the streets, going to people's place of employment, grabbing up people who have been here 20 years who have no criminal record, and in the process harassing random citizens, entering houses without judicial warrants, completely ignoring people's due process rights, detaining people for multiple days without any reason, and then lying about the facts on the ground. That's a complete lie of a framing. Of course, local authorities will cooperate on public safety threats. That's not what the protests are against. That's not what local authorities are against. And if you can find an instance of that, show it to me and I'll correct myself. But as Mayor Fry there outlined, of course they'll cooperate on that. They're not going to cooperate on just terrorizing and harassing communities. And that aspect, which is what the surge was about, is what the Trump administration is giving up on. Now, meanwhile, Kristi Noem, the DHS secretary, who I might read you some anecdotes from a recent report about her and one of her staffers, Corey Lewandowski, is that his name? And how they have like a secret relationship going on. They're both married separately to different people, but maybe they're getting a little bit of extra fun time together, which, hey, it's a stressful job. You need stress relief, but maybe cheating wouldn't be the best way to get that. But first, here was her holding a press conference. So they're all kind of in a state of chaos. They realize they've lost on this issue. They don't know what to do. On one hand, they still have a MAGA base that wants to see the most aggressive actions possible. On the other hand, they know that their party's, the country's perception of their entire party and their broader priorities is being obliterated by the actions that they're taking. And so they're all scrambling. And here was her holding one of these scrambling press conferences. It sounds like there's sirens, and then it sounds like either that is a part of a protest, or in addition to the sirens, there's also protesters, where you just can barely make out what's going on.
Well, they're obviously expressing their First Amendment rights, and we welcome that. As long as they do so peacefully, I think it's a wonderful thing.
Peacefully.
Yes.
Very powerfully, peacefully. Now, you hear her tone's a lot different. This is my point about the shift. It's not crediting them with that. Look at what they've done already, and they're going to continue to do a bunch of stuff that will be horrible. It's just that we have to feel some power. And we do have some power. And the bravery and courage of people who have been standing up and speaking out and protesting has made a difference. Where now she's like, they have the right to do that. Because she got thrown under the bus. I mean, she kind of belonged there. She should have been blamed. But Trump was trying to be like, I don't know, it was her. Or Stephen Miller was like, I don't know, her. And then she was like, no, it was Stephen Miller who was lying about someone that ICE agents just killed. And then she had this long meeting with Trump where he's like, what is going on? This is destroying his presidency. And now she's backing off and speaking a lot differently. The whole press conference was this type of disaster where she couldn't really understand what reporters were saying because of the protests. Lol.
Are you talking about our funding bill? We're concerned about the Department of Homeland Security not being funded. In fact, I think it's the wrong message to send to the world at this point in time. When you think about it, every other portion of the federal government has been funded except Homeland Security. That's telling the rest of the world the Democrat Party doesn't think that protecting America is safe. It's the wrong...
Just ginormous increases in funding to ICE specifically, I think people disagree with. Now, Brian Krasenstein posted, breaking: Kristi Noem and Lewandowski, both married separately, are in a relationship, allegedly. The Wall Street Journal reports that they do little to hide the relationship inside the department. In one incident, Lewandowski reportedly fired a U.S. Coast Guard pilot after Noem's blankie was left behind on a plane. They eventually reinstated the pilot because no one else was available to fly them home. So they had she flew in on one plane, and then they had some technical issues, so they moved her to a different plane, but she left her blankie. And so then they tried to fire the pilot, but then realized they didn't have a way home. They needed the pilot, so they reinstated the pilot. I don't know why they keep having stories like this. It kind of reminds me of the Kash Patel. I'm not leaving this plane till you get me a female size medium cool FBI jacket that I can wear. Noem and Lewandowski have reportedly fired or demoted roughly 80% of the career ICE field leadership that was in place when they started. But then you have those two specific stories. Another one is all of these people's promotions or getting hired got hindered if they wouldn't help Lewandowski get issued a gun and a badge. But there's no reason he would need a gun and a badge. He was cited as a special government employee just so he could buddy around with Kristi Noem and DHS. Why do you need a gun and a badge? So they've just been making this all about themselves. And it's getting so weird that Trump, who is the king of inappropriate relationships, was consistently talking about how he's uncomfortable with the way Noem and Lewandowski are spending time. According to the Journal, President Trump and his advisors are uncomfortable with Noem and Lewandowski's close relationship. So, a lot of chaos at DHS, as I'm sure you can imagine. But again, if we ever can take a breath, now is one of those moments where we have to continue forward, and there's so much more to push back against. But in one area, there seems to be an admission, a major admission of failure.